Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today, my guest is Ryan Bledsoe. Before we bring him on, just a couple of announcements. Coming March 11th, 12th, and 13th, Forbidden Knowledge NewsCon. We have 8 presenters. It's going to be online with a Rokfin premium membership, and it's only $10. Just sign up through that link in the description. You get the conference, you get all our premium content, all the content from every creator on Rokfin and the previous conferences. New episodes, the free ones, are always available on Rokfin, Odysee, and all podcast platforms. Our website, forbiddenknowledge.news, is the home of the Forbidden Knowledge Network. We feature other podcasts from our awesome community. Be sure and follow us on both our Facebook pages, Instagram, and Twitter. All those links are right there in the description. And check out C60 Purple Power. This may be the most powerful antioxidant known to man, and the benefits have been personally outstanding. Check them out for yourself. Click the link in the description, and if you order, you can get 10% off plus free shipping. Today, I want to welcome Ryan Bledsoe. He has had experiences with supernatural phenomena, UFOs, and intelligence agencies following an entity encounter in 2007, known as one of the most publicly documented cases of all time. He also hosts a podcast with his best friend Nick discussing the paranormal, spirituality, UFOs, consciousness, and all things weird beyond the veil. Bledsoe said so. Ryan, welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, man. And like I told you before, this has been really long overdue. But I'm looking forward to this. Your and your family's experiences with this unexplained phenomena is very incredible. And like I said in your intro, it's one of the most documented cases in history. And it demonstrates the multiple layers of this phenomena, from paranormal activity to UFOs and interdimensional entities. It has it all. So it's really amazing. And this is your first time on. So I'd love to let's start from the beginning, man. For those that aren't familiar with your case, what do you remember from the earliest occurrences?
Sure, and thank you for having me on. First of all, that's incredibly kind of you. I suppose it was a long time overdue. So, so the earliest thing I remember, I was 13 years old, and my dad, he's a pretty well-known guy by the name of Chris Bledsoe, was fishing out on the Cape Fear River with my oldest brother, Chris Jr., and 3 of their coworkers / contractors. At the time, they had like a housing contracting, like carpentry kind of thing. And they finished a job, and Friday evening, I'm pretty sure it was Friday, and they wanted to go out and go fishing. So they go to the Cape Fear River, really isolated place. And what happened there ended up being one of the most documented cases of all time. They did a whole TV documentary on it. So how deep do you want me to go into that?
Well, I was hoping that you could give, for the audience that may not be as familiar with the case, some of the highlights of it, some of the most profound occurrences that happened throughout that period.
Okay, sure. It's about, 4:30, 5 p.m. in the evening. And that's important because in January, as you know, it gets dark around 5:30, at least in North Carolina. So they get there in the evening and they're fishing, and my dad is in a super just dark place in his life. He had sold his multi-million-dollar housing development business, and just extenuating circumstances in our personal life. He had to settle for more of like a smaller contracting gig, and he was just really down and out. And I was 13 at the time. I have another brother and another sister. They were only like 15 and 10. And then our oldest brother, Chris Jr., he's out of school at the time. That's important as well. He's working with my dad. So he's there that night. And they get there, they're fishing for a little bit. My dad is just not really feeling it, but he doesn't want to ruin the fun. So just for a little context, the river is a very secluded area about a half mile off the road down a very narrow wooded trail. The only one vehicle can go in and out at a time. But when you get down the trail, it's this big clearing, kind of like, like a cul-de-sac formation, like a large circle-ish clearing on the Cape Fear River, which is a huge river that goes almost all the way through North Carolina. And anyway, so Dad walks up the trail that, the truck drives down, and he just takes a stroll. It's about a 15-minute walk. Like I said, it's about half a mile. And when he's walking along the trail, he hears things in the woods that are just really creeping him out and giving him the shivers. He's been a hunter his whole life, hunted bear, deer, anything. And this sound just really unsettled him. And he would get down on his hands and knees and try to like look in the brush, look down and, literally in the dirt, trying to figure out what this noise was. He could never figure it out. And when he would stop, the sound would stop. When he would start walking again, the sound in the bushes and in the trees would, start making the rustling sound again. And my father to this day tells me that was the scariest part of the whole thing, was not knowing what it was in the woods. It was freaking him out. So he gets to the top of the clearing. And when he gets there, excuse me, he sees on the horizon up in the sky across a massive field. So it's just, like a football size and a half, at least, trees on the other side. So you can clearly see the horizon. There's two massive fiery orange balls. At first he thought it was the sun, it's that evening time, 5:30, whatever. But then he realized, wait, there's two of them. And about by the time he realized it wasn't the sun, a third one shoots up beside them. My dad's freaking out. Oh my God, I know what's going on. It's obviously something not of this world. Turns around and runs back down that same trail. It's nighttime now. When he gets there, my brother Chris Jr. is freaking out. And the other three contractors are freaking out too. They're all like, where have you been? Where have you been? The truck is in a different spot. It's moved, which, indicates that time had gone by. But in my dad's perspective, he was only gone about 15, 20 minutes or so. The length of time it takes to go up and back the trail on foot. And my brother was explaining to my dad that he had seen these little things in the woods with red eyes. And, in the heat of the moment, they couldn't really understand what they were communicating. It was just pure chaos. They all get back actually, let me slow down. One of them says, look, and they look up and they see what looks like stars in the sky scrambling around like white lights. And then they shoot down and one of these things lands on the other side of the river, just from the sky, looked like a star, and boom, now it's on the other side of the river, just a very bright white light. So now they all get in the truck. They rush out of there down that, narrow wooded trail. And several of the guys said that they saw something running on all fours up to the truck and hop on the back of it. My dad didn't see that. He was driving. Anyway, so they get to the top of the clearing. And when they're at the clearing, out of the woods, about to hit the dirt road back to the highway, there's another one of those things blocking their path. It's the way I would describe it is it's like a light. It's like a brilliant, kind of round, ovalish white light. It moves. They rush home. They get everybody home. They're all fighting about who gets to go home first. They're freaking out. They are literally thinking it's the end of the world. And when my dad and my brother get home, they start freaking out. They're locking the doors, turning on all the lights. And at some point throughout the night, the dogs start barking really rough in the backyard, like something's going on. My brother is very upset. Don't go out there. Don't go out there. Lock the doors. My dad goes out there. He has to figure out what's going on. And he follows our dog to the woods. We lived on a 6-acre lot out in the country. So we had a lot of woods on our property. I used to play in these woods growing up. So, we know them very well. And anyway, so dad's out in these woods. He follows the dog. He sends the dog. He says, go get him, Rose. And the dog runs through the bushes. And my dad runs around the bushes trying to see what's in there. And he gets to a clearing in the woods in our backyard. And he sees standing under this tree, there's this 3 to 4 foot tall glowing entity with red eyes, which, they later understood that that's what Chris Jr. was seeing in the woods earlier that night at the Cape Fear River. And then I believe it was the next night, or it was very soon after, there was another incident where my dad saw a light in the backyard. Again, my brother's very upset. And at the time, my mother, my sister, and my brother, Jeremy, this was over a weekend, we were staying at my grandmother's house across town. So we were not there. It was my dad and my brother. They were the only ones home. Luck of the draw, right? And anyway, so dad goes out to the backyard again. He sees another one. And I don't understand how this works, but it's somehow put in his head. You don't understand, you have nothing to fear. We're not here to hurt you. We're here to help you. And, anyway, so for 10 months, That happened January 2007. And for 10 months, my dad sat on these events, fighting with my mom, fighting with his family. No one believed him except his kids and a few other people. Everyone thought he was crazy. He was demon possessed. He was on drugs. You name it, they thought it. And he sat on this for about 10 months. And then finally, October of 2007, my dad and I and some of my other siblings, I can't remember who, but we were watching like UFO Files or something, one of those like cheesy UFO shows in the early 2000s. And it said MUFON, if you have a sighting, report to MUFON. So we went on MUFON.com. Dad typed up his report. And like I said, 10 months after the initial encounter, he finally sent it. And it was very shortly after that MUFON responded and said, hey, we're going to send you a packet in the mail. Can you give a more detailed description and some drawings of what you experienced? So he did. Dad obliged. Very shortly after that, I'm talking within weeks or a month or two, it was not long at all, they sent an investigator out to our house. Investigator comes. I believe he was a guy named Steve McGee at first. And then, Steve McGee found some evidence that it was a very like hands-on, I guess they call it contact of the fourth kind, like meaning you see something face to face, not just like in the sky. They kicked him to the curb. They got another investigator named Norm Gagnon. He, gets more data, finds some radiation type stuff in the yard. They get Hollywood involved in the Discovery Channel. By the next year, 2008, they're out on our property shooting a Discovery Channel documentary with the actual head and director of MUFON and another investigator who was also Homeland Security at the time. Documentary comes out later, I believe in 2008. It was either 2008 or 2009. I don't know, but it's on the internet. And we were shocked at the way that we were portrayed. So stupid. So like not telling the truth, just a bunch of bumpkins. And after that, the story, in a way, it kind of like gained traction. People on they saw it on the TV, that a lot of people believed it, but the people in our town gave us extreme ridicule and just pure hatred, just treated us like we were trash, like we were crazy, really just vilified us. And so 5 years goes by. Meanwhile, us kids, the Bledsoe kids, are growing up, and we're still seeing these things on a weekly basis. We're seeing lights in the sky. We're having a lot of poltergeist type activity in the house. Things like my mom was shoved one time, some invisible entity just pushed her. It didn't hurt her. It just pushed her to get her attention. Things like that. Things like music would randomly start playing on my speaker sometimes, or things would crash. Light bulbs would go unscrewed. We'd be walking in the room, the light's on, walk out, walk back in, the light bulb is unscrewed, that kind of thing, just crazy things. 5 years of this passes, and we're just, like living in a very dark time where we're on TV, we're made to look bad. It's still happening. Then in 2012, my dad has another encounter with an entity who appeared to be human. She was a female with blonde hair and blue eyes. She floated off the ground about 4 feet. She appeared as a bull, tackled my dad, knocked him over, and basically told him, hey, this whole story, this whole experience you've had, this is your burden. You got to go tell the world. And ever since, he's been out on the internet telling it to as many people who will listen. And now I'm kind of helping out with that and, doing the same. And ever since then, we keep seeing them, keep having interactions. I've seen entities myself. Most of my siblings have, my mom has, we've pretty much all seen them. And
could you maybe tell us a little bit about the entities that you've seen for yourself, some of those experiences?
Sure. The one in particular that I'm referencing, I was hanging out in my bedroom with one of my really good friends, and we're just chatting. It's really late at night. We're both in college at the time, in our early 20s. So how, I'm not sure if you went to college, but in summer, you don't necessarily have anything to do, might not have a job. You just stay up late, hang out. We would just stay up late all the time. And it was one of those nights, and we're probably up 2 or 3 in the morning chatting. He really believes this stuff, so we would privately talk about it a lot. And he comes from a family of experiencers of different things like haunted houses and stuff. And we're talking about this, and one way or another, we kind of got each other's attention that we saw this happen at the same time. Something touched me on the ribs. It was invisible, just touched me. I can't really explain it. It felt like kind of like warm electricity. It wasn't really painful, but it touched me. I lifted my shirt and I showed him like, oh my God, there's a little red mark on my ribs. Like something actually just touched me, and his eyes are really wide. He's freaked out. And then I look in the corner and I see a 3 to 4 foot tall entity with a little round head. It wasn't fully visible. It was kind of like translucent, like glass. Like it wasn't full of color. You know, if you could describe glass as a color, that's how it looked. Like it was kind of like trying to be invisible, but it was shimmering so you could see it, you know? And it flashed out before I could even speak or think. And then I looked over at my friend and he looks over at me really quick. And it was like, we both knew we just saw that. And he said, did you see that too? And I said, yeah, I did. I really did. And anyway, so that was a pretty profound encounter. I've seen things up close, I'd say about 10, 15 feet, like balls of light that are just intelligent, moving around the yard on their own with long streaks, 10, 20 foot long streaks, just zipping around the yard. Wow. I've seen them come down, go into the ground and disperse, and then poof, they're in another, location 10 feet away from me, and they're just flying all around. My dad and I have sat in the yard recently last year and watched orbs as close as 10 feet away. We still regularly see this phenomenon. And there are some times in the house and right in my front yard that I've seen flashes of white light and little, it's very hard to describe. I mean, the best depiction you could give is like a Hollywood movie, even though it's fiction, but just like a little flash of white light. And it's like a little figure just running kind of like it's engulfed by the light. I've seen things like that up close.
Man, that is insane. Okay, so I want to go back to whenever this was first occurring and your dad was trying to get your family to kind of see what was going on. Was there anything in particular that turned the tide and made the rest of your family kind of realize that this was a real phenomenon occurring?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So me and my siblings were young. First of all, Chris Jr. was 17. He was there, so he didn't need convincing. He saw it firsthand right away. Me and my other older brother, Jeremy, and then my younger sister, Emily, as far as I'm concerned, I believe Dad since day one. My dad comes home, tells me he sees this thing. I believe him. I'm 13 anyway. 13-year-olds tend to, believe things a lot easier. It scared my sister pretty bad in those early days. She believed it. Jeremy, he believed it as well. He didn't much like to be so intimately involved with the experiences because of the treatment we had at school. But it was my mom. To answer your question, it was my mom who took the convincing over months or years. And she still does maintain to this day that she's not really into it. She doesn't necessarily feel thankful that it happened, but she knows that something's happening. She's seen things crazier than me even. I would say it took probably, I don't know, because I was 13. Within the first year, she knew something weird was going on, especially when that thing shoved her in the kitchen. She's seen the red eyes out in the yard, walking around, freaked her out. She's seen like shadow people run around the house, and she saw an entity outside the window. My brother saw it too. It was right behind me. Like if you see this photo here, if this was like a window, there was one like walk right by my head, and she saw it right behind me. So she's seen crazy things, but she just lived in denial for many years, not wanting to come to terms with it. But
now, when the Discovery Channel came out and they started filming, did they kind of portray that they were gonna put it out in a certain way, and then when it came out, it was completely different than anything that they were portraying that they were doing?
Yes, pretty much. What they had told my dad was that it was potentially the most important UFO case in modern times. And they even went so far as to tell us, like in 1952, there were government reports of people seeing the same entities in craft. They had diagrams drawn from witnesses at the time seeing the same entities, the same craft, described down to the square inch of these things with accurate perfection, exactly what my dad saw. They knew we were telling the truth from the start. And they told us that. They came and said, this is why we know you're telling the truth. that was before the filming.
Mm.
When the filming happened, they started throwing curveballs, like putting my dad in a 4-hour long, what's the thing called? Lie detector test,
Yeah.
asking him a series of over 30 questions over and over and over until, I mean, my dad was so stressed out during the lie detector test because it was 4 hours. At one point, he literally fell asleep, just bored out of his mind, sitting there like, when is this going to end? When is this going to end? Finally, after 4 hours, my dad gets an inconclusive answer. They show that one to the world, that he was not telling the truth and that he was being deceptive. And there were some other things too, like the way they treated us off camera was not in any manner I would consider like professional. They use tricks. Like, for example, they would say, we're going to be at your house at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. We're going to begin filming. 9 comes around. Hey, something happened. We need you at the hotel off I-95. This is where we're staying right now. Please, as soon as you can get here, get here. Okay, great. My mom and dad are thinking, we got the house ready. They're supposed to come to us and come film. Next thing you know, my dad's going to the hotel 10, 20 minutes away. And when he gets there, they whisk him into a room. They're like, come in here. They whisk him into a room, sit him down. And the first part of the entire documentary filming was they put the cameras and the lights in his face and they sit him down and he takes a lie detector test.
Oh, man.
And yep, not even like the, hey, how are you? Nice to meet you kind of thing. It was just like, boom, lie detector test. And then they put that at the end, so it's just the editing they did was deceptive. They cut a couple of my mom's words to make her look like she was saying things she wasn't really saying. And all around just bad vibe. Yeah. Brought a lot of harassment and ridicule to our family. And
yeah. Well, luckily, this is kind of off topic, but, the mainstream entertainment and Hollywood and these TV shows are kind of falling by the wayside lately in the past couple of years. And people are looking at, real stuff like podcasting now. So, that's becoming the mainstream entertainment. So that's what I, see as encouraging about that whole situation because, that's trash anyway. But I want to go back to some of the occurrences that happened to you with, let's say, intelligence agency. I know you've had quite a few run-ins with some maybe unknown or 3-letter agencies. Could you talk about some of those?
Yeah, sure. So when I would say 15 years old, so this is 2 years after the initial experience. It could have been 2.5, I don't know, but it was a couple years. And I'm home one day, again, summer break. I'm in high school. My dad's out about in the town, whatever. My mom's home doing something. And, we're just all doing different things. It's summer, whatever. And I'm home for some reason and I hear the doorbell. And when I go answer the doorbell, it's this 6-foot+ really tall guy with white hair and really beady eyes. From looking at a telescope his whole life, he kind of had eyes like this, like his eye was permanently,
Yeah.
And he was just a really intimidating looking guy. And I'm like, hi, how can I help you? Hanging around his neck, he has a it's not a badge, but it's like a lanyard with like a identity pass thing in it, like a laminate with an identity thing, and it was NASA. He says, hey, I'm Harold Povenmire. I'm the press manager for NASA. I just drove all the way from Cape Canaveral to see Chris Bledsoe. Is this the right address? I said, yeah, let me call my dad. I call my dad and I said, hey, Dad, there's a NASA guy at the front door. And he's like, keep him occupied. I'll be home in an hour or something like that. And from then on, we've had the government in our lives ever since. I'm 28 now, so this has been, 13 years. And anyway, for the record, the people who made the Discovery Channel documentary definitely had backgrounds in the intelligence agency. So if you count that, it's been the whole time.
Oh,
and it started with NASA. He actually came around our house multiple times a year, and we would let him stay in our house. It's just Southern hospitality thing. Come on in here, stay in the guest room. And he came dozens of times over 11 years until he passed away. And that was the first. And then I guess in around 2012, Dad started getting really heavily involved with like CIA suitors, I guess you could call them. This guy's in the CIA. He wants to meet you. This guy's in the CIA. He wants to meet you too. And he's, the whole TTSA, To the Stars Academy thing. He's ran with them. Other CIA people, like, are you familiar with American Cosmic?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's met those people as well. And I don't know what kind of detail you want me to go into, but
Well, I'd love to, because this is fascinating. I'd really love to hear about what, if you can, kind of what happened with the TTSA and his involvement there. And I know that there's a lot of the players with that. I wouldn't trust with my grandmother, but it's very interesting, some of the things that played out since then and have happened through the mainstream, and they're still trying to push, which I don't trust any of that mainstream narrative and what's coming out of our government and the Pentagon and the media, just because hey, they don't have a good fucking track record for telling the truth about things.
Yeah.
What was his experience like with all this?
Okay, so let me just take a step back. So in about 2015, I'm pretty sure it was 2015, my dad and I and my now wife, who at the time was just my girlfriend, and my mom, the four of us go to Philadelphia. We got in touch with this guy who doesn't necessarily like his identity to be. So I'm just going to keep him nameless. It's not like he's in the CIA. He's just a friend of our CIA friends who kind of connected us all. Anyway, out of respect his privacy, I won't say his name, but this individual flew us out, stayed at his, had us stay at his house out near Philly, and had arranged for us to go to the bar mitzvah of the grandson of Robin Leach, the millionaire. And the grandson is just a wonderful young man, a very sweet child, and he was having some health issues at the time. And the word had gotten out that people coming to our property and also seeing these entities up close and seeing orbs and various phenomenon that happens around us, they were being healed of life-threatening diseases like cancer. Some people like strokes, tumors. They would come to our property and they would leave, and then they'd have a doctor's visit. And every time, the doctors are like, I don't know what happened, but it's gone, And the Robin Leach's grandson was in need of some sort of miracle, some sort of healing. He had a serious disease at 13 years old. So they flew us out to this bar mitzvah just to kind of get to know the family and be close. And God, man, when we got there, there was the deputy director of the CIA was there, and find out the kid's best friend is Beau Biden's son. And I'm trying to think. Are you familiar with Jim Simivan? He's like he's in TTSA. He's the CIA guy in TTSA.
Not really, but I mean, it's the name is kind of ringing a bell a little bit.
That's okay. So he was the CIA head of the like clandestine services, like the spies. He was there. We met him involved with this, all this stuff going on out in this. Flew out to Philly, drove to New York. That's where we met the high level CIA officers, was in New York City. And we became friends with Jim Simivan, who is now he's like the president or the vice president of To the Stars Academy. He like runs with Tom DeLonge. Very nice guy, but very high level, highly connected individual who actually ran the spy program for the CIA. And, it was pretty surreal being in the same room as like him and the deputy director at the time of the CIA. And what was your question again to get me back on track?
No, just tell us about your dad's experience with the TTSA and these three-letter agencies.
Right. So I told the whole bar mitzvah thing to set the stage of how we met them, and then going forward, we stayed friends with Jim up into this day. I think he and Dad even chatted pretty recently, like in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And again, I maintain he's a very nice guy. He's never said anything funny or off color to us. I don't 100% know what his motivations are. I would like to think and hope that he is exactly who he says he is, and he's doing what he says he's doing. I really have hope for that. But then again, like you said earlier, it's like, how do you trust these institutions? It's very hard. But on my side of the coin, it's very hard when you're actually meeting them face to face. It's like, well, damn, what do I believe?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
that's so interesting.
But so through meeting him, things progressed a little bit, and then Dad got kind of in touch with Tom DeLonge, and Dad flew out to the Hollywood area a few times, hung out with him. They got to know each other pretty well. Things progressed to where Dad and Lou Elizondo, which Lou Elizondo is, he's very active right now in the UFO community. He is the former director of the Pentagon Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very fancy acronym for, they basically tracked what they thought might be UFOs. And Lou Elizondo retired from that. Now he's not in TTSA anymore, but he was. So Lou Elizondo and Tom DeLonge flew my dad out to Ohio so my dad could get them medals. Because through another CIA contact, sorry, I'm having a hard time. Through one of our other CIA contacts, Dad knew where he could get his hands on some medals. And I'll go back to that guy in a little bit.
Mm.
Goes out and gets some medals, and then things progressed even further, and they wanted Dad to be like a core member of TTSA, and unfortunately he did have to decline. It just wasn't in Dad's personal interest or advantage or what have you to tell his story 100% as truthfully as he desires to and be a core member of TTSA. So he did have to decline that. Talks of a movie, they wanted to fund a project, it just didn't work out. And so then back to 2012, I'm going backwards in time a little bit because I skipped over a CIA guy. And there's this guy named Timothy Taylor. He's kind of mythologized in this popular UFO book called American Cosmic. He's given the pseudonym and, as Tyler Durden, and he's made out to be like a billionaire playboy who has like all this experimental technology. And in reality, at least my experience of him, he came to our house and started asking us questions like, how do you know this stuff? And he had these pieces of metal with him. You are familiar who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So he had these pieces of metal with him, put them in our hands one by one, our family members. And when we touched the pieces of metal, they would send electricity through our bodies, so just weird things. He did these kind of like little experiments like that. And he did show us a PowerPoint slide about like Area 51 and other things of that nature. And basically said at the time, we would really prefer if you didn't go talk about this in any public capacity. But me, I'm quite the rebellious type, and I feel like the world does deserve the truth. So here I am out here trying to share what I know. But so
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead and finish. It's okay.
I was going to say, if anybody wants to know about that guy, they can just read American Cosmic. And they didn't write about my dad in the book, unfortunately. But anyway, so that guy is the one I'm talking about who came to our property, brought the medals, and we don't really talk to him much anymore.
Now, did he or any of these three later agency guys give you any indication of what they thought was really going on with this whole phenomenon?
Yeah. So post MUFON documentary, right? Because those people were deceptive. They told us they believed us, and then to the world they portrayed us another way. So the Timothy Taylor individual, the Jim Simi Vans and that crowd, those CIA individuals, 100% in private and Lou Elizondo as well, in private communicated some of them to me. I never met Lou Elizondo face to face, so I just haven't had that opportunity to speak to him. But I do know he told my father in private, as well as the other guys, that they know without a doubt that the way that we're experiencing the phenomenon, what's happening to us, is true. It's truly true. It's really happening. We were told that most of the stuff on the internet is fake regarding UFO stuff, which is why I maintain this position so strongly on like my show and my podcast. I do 100% based on my experiences, the people I've met, and just what I've observed. Everybody knows about Operation Mockingbird. Everybody knows by now, I would hope that, there's a lot of propaganda out there in the internet. But anyway, so the majority of UFO stuff out there is fake. And in reality, it's a more spiritual, interdimensional phenomenon. It's not necessarily so nuts and bolts like we're led to believe by this, this whole Hollywood operation going on. And they tell us that. They tell us, like Jim Simivan told me on the phone. He told me in my backyard a separate time. He tells my dad. They still email, and he maintains, you're the guy. Like, you're the most studied experiencer in the world. People want a piece of you. And they just gas us up and tell us like they're so honored to meet us. Now, why they don't go talk about us publicly and vindicate us and back us up, I'm not sure. I couldn't tell you. I wish I knew the answer. But in private, they're all about us, and they're all, you're legit. I can't believe we're here. And, what do they tell you? We really want to know. And one thing is particularly that was communicated to my dad was that they really don't have contact with these entities, that they're not particularly so friendly with these government organizations, that specifically referring to the entities.
Now, I
The
find it
entities. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, no, it's okay. I find it interesting that behind closed doors they're saying, "Oh yeah, it's an interdimensional spiritual phenomenon," which I agree with. I've had
Right.
spiritual contact myself, and I wholeheartedly believe there's so much more to this. It's like an interdimensional onion that's going to take, you can unpeel in 10 lifetimes. But there's
Yeah.
that's interesting that he says that behind closed doors, and in the mainstream, it's all nuts and bolts, and we want to, it's a threat. We got to figure out what's going on with this. So what is your understanding of the phenomena? How is it, how has your understanding kind of evolved since you started dealing with it?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know how deep you want to go, but
Let's
I'm
go
gonna answer
deep,
the
brother.
question.
We can go
Okay.
deep. Yeah.
Okay. So, like I said, this started happening when I was 13, and I'm 28 now. So that's 15 years that I've had time to reflect, absorb everything I could absorb, meet and greet all these CIA people, get some classified documents, some other conversations, and just really like kind of feel the heartbeat of this UFO phenomenon. I mean, you see the family on like a fictional TV who's seen the UFO. Well, that was my family in real life. Like thousands of people chomping at the bits to come poke us apart and figure out what's the craft like, what's the being like. Like we were the alien family on TV. And I've had a lot of time to really reflect about this from a very personal perspective.
Mm.
And what I've come to understand is that the ancient mythologies, in one way or another, are true, in the sense that in Middle Eastern cultures they had genies, and in Irish culture they called them fairies. In the Bible they called them angels. Well, in Egypt they called them the Neter or the Neteru, the nature spirits that animate our reality. And I've kind of come to understand that it's not necessarily a religious phenomenon, but if you study the ancient myths, especially the esoteric myths, you come to understand that this phenomenon is very spiritual. They've been written about, seen, interacted with, communicated to, and about since humanity's been here. It's only in the last 100 years that mankind is so stupid that we believe everything we see on the TV. Who's putting that stuff on the TV? Well, it's the top of the pyramid. It's the, what are there, like 6 media companies like Disney,
Yeah.
Fox, etc. I don't even know them all. I can't name them off the top of my head.
Right.
And we're so stupid as a species now that we just believe what our masters at the top of society tell us. Oh, they're aliens. I've seen it in Star Wars. I've seen it in Star Trek. They're spinning around in these little ships. And this guy who's retired from the CIA, or he's in the government, he's going on the internet and he's saying that too. So it must be true because an authority figure told me. But in reality, I believe that the consciousness of humanity has kind of fallen away from the wisdom it once had, and has now been just ignorantly, stupidly just dumbed down and locked into a purely materialistic view, when in reality the truth, in my opinion, lies between like the spiritual studies and phenomenon, fully blending with science, cutting edge science like quantum mechanics, things like that. So yeah, I mean, I'm 100% on board. I would bet my life savings on it. I've seen it. I've interacted with it. My dad has had face-to-face conversations with these entities. They are spiritual beings. They come from another dimension, an eternal dimension that is not physical. And when they come here, they vibrate at such a fast rate that they appear to be light. That's why they are light in the first place. And anyway, that's my 2 cents on what they are and where they come from.
What do you think their relationship to humans is? I mean, we've heard speculation and theories from everything that, we're a DNA creation between a hominid and an interdimensional being, to that they're, just like you said, angels and spirit guides, and they've always been a part of our reality, which I kind of lean towards, but I don't know. My view on this stuff is shifting constantly. Just as the more I learn about it, the more I find out I don't really know anything about this stuff. But what do you think is the relationship between humans and these entities?
That's a really good question. What the female entity told my dad referring to the 2012 experience. She's popularly known as the lady. The name she gave was Hathor, like the Egyptian deity. She appeared as a bull and everything, an ethereal bull. It wasn't like a real physical bull in the yard. It was kind of like a ghost. But anyway, so she appeared as a bull, charged through my dad, knocked him over. It felt like a very strong blast of wind. He rolls over, gets up and looks at her, and she's a very beautiful woman with a long white gown from neck to feet. The gown is twinkling like the stars, bright blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and she's looking at him and she says, "You know why I'm here, and this is your burden. You got to tell your story. If you don't, anything bad that happens to humanity, there could be blood on your hands, like Joel, the Watchman." And she basically told my dad, this reality is like a game. She didn't use the word matrix, but that's, just synonyms. I mean, if you use it reasoning, you can kind of intuit that that's what she's getting at. She said, it's a game. Your soul comes here on a journey to evolve and to go to that higher place, that eternal world where these, interdimensional entities and the orbs and the like, where they come from. So what I understand based on what she told my father is that consciousness is constantly evolving, and I mean like your consciousness, my consciousness. I don't just mean that. I just mean like the collective consciousness, humanity as a whole, And I believe that as we evolve and reach that next level, maybe we'll become as they are in another lifetime. We'll be able to come back here and guide the next people, and we might be those beings of light in millions of years in the future. I think it's just very complicated. I don't think they just come from another planet and they age and die like we do. I think they're invincible, eternal beings, literally made of light. They come here to guide us.
Now, it sounds like a good portion of your experiences weren't necessarily negative. Did you have any experiences that were frightening or negative? And do you think there's a duality in this, just like everything, to where there's negative entities that are part of this multiverse as well?
Yes, I've seen shadow figures in my home. I've met people who were, as you would say, like maybe demonically possessed. I mean, we've had some people come to our home, but Dad was on TV. So we have thousands of people over the years through Facebook, look us up in the yellow pages back in the day when that was a thing. And we would let them all come, every one of them in those days. Now we don't hardly let anyone come because it's been draining for 15 years, Yeah. Man, there was a time when a dozen people were camped out in the yard, in tents and literally camping. It kind of became like a tourist attraction just to come to our house. And we have met some very, very bizarre and I unfortunately, I would say crazy individuals who I would argue could be like a true blue demonic possession. I mean, we've had people come to our house wailing about, shouting in strange, weird things. And, after that, we're like, we don't want these people around anymore.
Wow.
Like I said, I've seen the shadows. That's really it. I mean, I haven't had any like intensely negative experiences. They've mostly been positive. I do know that I know personally some other people who have had negative experiences, but mine have mostly been very positive.
Do you think that there's a kind of a technology or physicality involved in this at all? We hear about the Greys, which seem to sometimes be physical, and they sometimes seem to be like biological androids or something, some kind of robots. And of course, the pieces of craft that have been recovered, the very physical craft that we seem to see sometimes appeared, the Rendlesham Forest incident. I mean, all these things that, we have apparently reverse engineered some pretty interesting stuff from our own government and military. So how is this, both interdimensional and physical? Do you think that there is also maybe aliens out there coming from different planets?
That's a very complex question. To be honest with you, I don't know. All I do know is that there's an interdimensional phenomenon coming and interacting with humanity. Are there other planets out there with other aliens? Maybe. I honestly don't know. Do I believe it? No, I haven't experienced it. But my take on that is, these beings come into our reality. I don't necessarily think that they play by the same rules as we do. I mean, I've had things unscrew light bulbs and in my backyard on the porch, just walk out, the lights on, walk in, walk right back out, and the light bulb's unscrewed inside of a glass casing. I think they can do things that we can't understand. They can make things happen.
Probably shift our perception, would you say? Maybe
shift
make
our
us see
perception.
things?
Yep. Or manifest material things.
Right.
And
Okay.
so that we could understand that this is something of a higher nature. I truly don't know, but I can tell you that the phenomenon that I have constantly interacted with and seen is not physical. Could it become physical? Who am I to say that it couldn't? I don't know.
Well, what are your thoughts on this? On individuals that claim that they're part of a secret space program, that they have off-planet operations, that we've gone to Mars, that we're fighting mantis beings on these planets, and all this crazy Star Wars stuff, like you were saying earlier. I've had individuals on my show. It seems that they personally believe that they've experienced this, but then it could also go back to some kind of MK Ultra programming where they were programmed to believe this or planted with these false memories for some reason, maybe to get this secret space narrative out there, or this, the alien narrative that we were talking about earlier out there, and maybe get these individuals, to believe that this has occurred so much, and get them out on the interview circuit and having their own shows to where they're out there getting this misinformation out there. I don't know. I mean, it's so deep. What do you think about that?
I don't mean any disrespect to any of your previous guests, but I don't believe a single shred of any of that. I don't know them. That helps me say that a little easier without fear of offending anybody.
Yeah.
But I don't believe a single freaking word of any of that. That just goes right back to what I was saying earlier. I've personally chatted with very high level officers of the CIA. I mean, just for frame of reference, one of the figures I mentioned earlier is a GS-19. The highest rank, from what I was told, is GS-21. Now we're talking contractor ranks, like special forces, intelligence agencies. They don't just have like a private and a captain and a general and what have you. They have GS contractor ranks. A GS-19 is like a 2-star general equivalent in the Army. We were dealing with very high powered, basically generals. I mean, when you put it that way. And were they lying to me? Maybe. But to me, it makes more sense that in this case, they were telling the truth, and they flat out told us, like, most of the stuff you read out there on the internet is garbage. We believe your family. We want to know why they're coming to you. They're not coming to us. They're not communicating with us. Why are they communicating to you? We believe you, So it's like, I don't buy. This is going to sound bad, but it's almost like the way I've grown up. It's beneath me to give into such baseless internet conspiracies that are completely ridiculous and fly in the face of my entire life. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
It does. And you mentioned something that is kind of a big question. Why your family? Why your dad? Why are this phenomenon concentrated on your property, and is this events happening there? And it's not only you. They have places like Skinwalker Ranch, the Meadow,
yeah.
all these places of super high strangeness, but it also can be seemingly attached to people or a person, right? So what do you think is going on with maybe your family in particular?
I have no clue. I suspect that I'll never find the answer. For the love of God, I wish I knew the answer. I truly wish. I mean, ever since I was a child, I wondered, like, why is this happening to us? I still wonder. But what I do know is that the beings told my dad, and I just remembered something important from earlier that I'm going to come back to in a second. But what the beings told my dad was, your soul was brought from another place and put here to tell this story. That's what I know. I mean, that's from what they said. What I just remembered was when I made the point at the very beginning of this conversation, when I was saying he's walking up the path. We're going back to the Cape Fear River. He's walking up the path. It was like 4:30, 5 o'clock, something like that. And he walks back at night, right? I forgot to mention that's so important because through the investigation, they found out that my dad had 4 hours of missing time. So he was literally physically missing for 4 hours. Whereas from my dad's perspective, he walked up the path and he came right back down. So that first night, he actually did have 4 hours of missing time. He had an incredibly profound hypnotic regression. And so I just wanted to fill that gap. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. No worries at all. I want to get your thoughts on some of the things that we're experiencing as a collective right now. We all know since 2020 that what we thought of conspiracies have actually become true. It's just a reality now. And there's a lot of deception involved in all aspects of our reality, from our history to our politics to our economics and everything. But there's been a shift. Education, of course. Yeah, everything. Now, it has been a shift lately where people are starting to realize this, and not only that, there's become a renewed interest in paranormal, UFOs, spirituality, and people looking at things that were hidden from them because they're realizing, hey, there were things hidden. I've been lied to. What else have I been lied to? What are your thoughts about this era that we're heading into as a collective? On one side, the mainstream is trying to shut down this seeking of knowledge with the censorship and everything that's happening, but I don't think it can be stopped. I think that once this can of worms has been opened, it's just going to keep going, and we're going to keep waking up and keep chasing that truth. What do you think?
I personally believe maybe beginning in 2012. I mean, I couldn't possibly know for sure, but I believe that beginning in 2012 signaled the shift into the age of Aquarius. And I'm sure you remember, I mean, anybody our age or relatively close to us in age, outside of high school, conscious adults, we all remember the year 2012. We all remember everyone thought the world was going to end, or at least talked about it. You didn't necessarily, not everybody believed it, but there was some sort of ritualistic programming happening to the masses in the year 2012. And they even made a movie called 2012. And everybody was talking about the Mayan calendar. There were countless documentaries about it, and nothing happened. Now, I believe what really happened is we entered the age of Aquarius. And as we're shifting deeper into the age of Aquarius, we're going to find that older mechanisms of control are going to be on the way out. But before they die, they're going to go out kicking and screaming, like they got us with all this stuff in the last few years. I'm praying that they're not about to get us with war, because it really looks right now that they're going to war with Russia. This is just my speculation. They always get us with these big things in the public and trick us and deceive us and kind of like whip us into shape to do what they want us to do.
I think it's about maybe keeping us in this fear state so we don't look at the real enemy and look at what we really should be looking at,
Right, which is the 1%. It's the top. It's, the corporations, the media, the big tech, big pharma, et cetera, et cetera. It's not aliens. Aliens are not the enemy. I've actually been very kind to my family and hundreds of people that have come to our property. They're very benevolent beings. Anyway, so I believe it's about the age of Aquarius, and I believe that because that is another key thing that this female entity who called herself Hathor told my dad in 2012. She said that the humankind or mankind or whatever is going to shift into the age of Aquarius. And when a particular astrological alignment happens, that we will come into a new knowledge, like an awakening. And that alignment was when the red star Regulus aligns with the gaze of the Sphinx just before dawn in the constellation Leo, there will be a new knowledge. Now, some of our NASA friends ran that through a simulation. They got the date for that particular alignment to be September 23rd, 2026, which is the fall equinox. In the last year, some of our other researcher friends ran it through a simulation, and they came back and said, hey, wait, I'm actually getting the date March 23rd, 2026. This is speculation. Do I know for sure that anything's going to happen in 2026? No, but I do know that that alignment is supposed to happen in 2026. The entity never gave a date. She just said when that alignment happens, we'll enter a new knowledge. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And as we enter this new age, there's fear, like you said, fears of war, fears of all these horrible things that are being put upon us by the 1%, by the elites. But I see that the old system's crumbling. I don't think it could be sustainable anymore. I think people are losing their fear, and I don't think they can throw much more at us that'll keep us in fear besides like a fake alien invasion or something. I don't know. But
or a world war.
Exactly, or a world war. But I have hope. hopes. I have hopes that we're just not gonna play by their rules anymore, and that a new system will emerge after this old one is crumbled. I'm sure it's going to be some tough times going through it, but I know that I have a knowing that in our ancient past we had a better understanding of our spirituality and the multiverse and these entities that were interacting with us, and we probably had better communication and relationships with these entities. And do you think going forward, maybe in our future, we may once again have a relationship with these spirits, these entities, with our planet and everything that's surrounding us that's unseen?
See, that's something I think about quite often. I don't necessarily know that the way that our physiology and our biology is at the moment that we could handle constant interaction with these entities. I mean, they're pure beings of energy. It definitely takes a toll on you being around them. Like my dad has rheumatoid arthritis. Do I know this for sure that it's because he interacted with these entities so much all these years? No, but that's one thing that the CIA and the Vatican, I didn't even get to the Vatican part, but the Vatican and the CIA indicated that my dad's rheumatoid might be from constant entity interaction. Could they be lying?
We
Yes.
got to get to the Vatican now that you mentioned
it.
Okay,
we'll get there. We'll definitely get there because that's quite a story in and of itself. But do I think that we'll get to the point to where on a global level we'll like see them more and understand them and be able to in some fashion communicate with them? Yes, I do. Do I think they're going to be like walking around like we are and we're just like holding hands and buddy and like my light being friend is going to class with me? No, I don't think that's possible. I think the name of the game here is evolution, and the whole reason that and I mean like evolution in total, not just of the body, like we're taught in the Rockefeller school system, not just that like crony Darwinian evolution. I mean the real evolution, which is consciousness is evolving, and over time, life is reflecting that as a mirror image. So the physical world is evolving to keep up with the faculties of consciousness. Like I said, the truth is in spirit and science are one. They don't exclude each other. That's a lie. If you are a part of a religious system that says don't believe the science, they're lying. If you're part of a scientific community that says don't believe the spirit, they're liars too. Because reality is science and science and spirituality are like the East and the West. Like they're these two paradoxical sides of reality that need each other to exist. But anyway, so that's a little bit of a tangent. Sorry.
No, that was well said. Now let's hear about what happened with the Vatican, man.
Okay, yeah. So that guy Timothy Taylor, he's the Department of Defense. So he was in a group called the NRO. It's the National Reconnaissance Office. It's a joint operation between the CIA, Air Force, and NASA. He was a high-level member of this, apparently. I mean, when he walked up to NASA, they called him the Dragon, and he could wave his key card and take my dad through all 10 levels or whatever number of level. I don't know. I might have just made up the number 10 off the top of my head. But they took my dad through all the levels of Cape Canaveral security because this guy, the Dragon, said, I'm going to do it. So he's obviously, connected, influential, powerful, whatever. And again, if you want to read more about this guy, there's a book called American Cosmic. Anyway, so the author of American Cosmic and Timothy Taylor somehow or another got access to the Vatican. She is actually a little context about the author. She is a friend of ours. And there was a time years ago where her and dad were in constant communication. And she, through her religious credentials, she's a PhD scholar of philosophy and religion and was the chair of the department at University of North Carolina, Wilmington. She used her credentials, got into the Vatican secret archives. Timothy Taylor went with her, or the Dragon, that's what he's called at NASA. The Dragon goes with her, gets to the gate, they don't let him in. Somehow or another, I don't know, I think the story's in the book, but he like makes a phone call or something or shows his credentials and they let him in. Done. He's in the secret archives. So they go in there, they're talking with all these Jesuit priests. They have like a ceremony in my dad's honor. They talk to like this Jesuit astronomer guy. He's like Vatican's head astronomer. And a lot of the conversation was about my dad. And one thing they did was like they put a photo of my dad in between the manuscripts of Galileo and Copernicus. Or at least they told us they did. And supposedly they mentioned to my dad that the Pope said a prayer for my dad or something like that. Or like in the papal hall, the Jesuits said a prayer for my dad's rheumatoid arthritis. And long story short, they had communicated that they understood about the phenomenon that my family was interacting with. They knew it was real. And that's really all I got on the Vatican. I mean, I don't know that much more, but
man, that's so interesting. You've been through quite some fascinating instances, and Ryan, I want to thank you so much for coming on tonight. This was fascinating. We could keep going for hours. I'd love to have you back on and discuss this some more. Before you go, tell everyone about what you got going on with your podcast and anything else interesting upcoming.
Yeah, so it's right behind me. Bledsoe said so. Well, I guess it'll be in reverse. But I have started a podcast. We're about to drop episode number 32. It's going really well. It's me and a couple of my best friends, and we just sit back and we just cut up. And I go into like a lot of pop culture and also like the esoteric occult stuff in pop culture, as well as like a lot of my personal experiences. And we're just having fun with it. Thanks for letting me mention it, and that's really all I have.
You guys are on. You guys are on Rokfin too, right?
Yes, we are.
How you liking Rokfin? Oh yeah. How you like it?
Oh, cool. Rokfin is great. We haven't fully launched premium content yet. So at the moment we're uploading all of our episodes to Rokfin, but we haven't even like made a Patreon yet. We're still getting into the groove.
Still babies.
We're still babies. We've been doing this 8 months, and it's grown like hyper fast. Like we just hit 160,000 downloads today, 8 months in, and we're just great. Like, it is, but it's like we're going through all these growing pains. So our next step is trying to be more like official with Rokfin and Patreon and being more like premium content. We're just putting the main show on Rokfin right now. We don't like have a premium show yet, so I would feel guilty advertising that, and there's not even premium content on there yet, so.
Right on. Fair enough. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. This was amazing, and like I said, we'll have to talk to you again sometime in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you. You've been an incredible host, actually, like one of my favorites.
Oh, well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. You were a great guest, and I can't wait to talk some more. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening, and we will be talking again tomorrow. See you then.